The lost blueprints of the gods. Did ancient civilizations hide advanced technology? The past is never silent. It lingers in the cracks of ruined temples, in the fragments of broken tablets, in the lines of myths that refuse to fade even after centuries of retelling. The past lingers like an echo, a whisper carried on the dust of forgotten empires. And sometimes those whispers sound less like myths and more like memories. Memories of things that should not exist. A bronze mechanism that calculates the dance of planets with uncanny precision. A jar that produces a trickle of power, as if electricity itself had been caught in clay. A temple whose very stones seem to hum, as though tuned to frequencies only the earth itself remembers. History books tell us these are anomalies, accidents, misunderstood artifacts from cultures still stumbling in the dark. But what if the opposite is true? What if those shards, those fragments, those peculiar objects we cannot easily explain are not the exceptions? What if they are the survivors? The last traces of a knowledge that once burned bright before being drowned in war, in conquest, in fire. Tonight, we are not telling a simple story of progress. We are not charting humanity's clean ascent from primitive to modern. Instead, we are walking into the shadows, into the spaces where history frays and memory blurs, where myth bleeds into archaeology, where forgotten inventions whisper of powers that seem almost impossible for their time. For the next 5 hours, we will wander through this twilight of knowledge. We will explore relics that defy explanation. We will trace the possibility that ancient civilizations, Egyptians, Mesopotamians, Greeks, Hindus, and perhaps cultures even older still, touched upon technologies we believe belong only to the modern world. Imagine it for a moment. A world where the ancients harnessed energy in ways we barely comprehend. A world where sound and vibration were not just music, but tools. Where light was more than fire. Where stone carried memory. Where stars were not only guides, but part of machines designed to calculate destinies. These are not comfortable ideas. They unsettle us because they challenge the story we tell ourselves, that we are the first to stand on the summit of reason, that no one before us glimpsed the world with the clarity of science. But what if we are wrong? What if we are not the pinnacle, but merely one point in an endless cycle? What if civilizations rise, discover, create, and then, just as quickly, lose everything, leaving only ruins and riddles for the next age to find? The Library of Alexandria, the Baghdad Battery, the Antikythera Mechanism, the mysteries of Vimanas, the legends of Atlantis, the stones of Pumapunku. Each is a fragment, each is a question, and together they form a constellation of uncertainty, a map pointing not to certainty, but to possibility. Tonight, we do not promise answers. Instead, we invite you into the silence between the answers, into the pause where history stutters, into the gap where forgotten knowledge might still be hiding, waiting to be rediscovered. So settle in. Close your eyes if you wish. Let the world around you fade, and let your mind drift backwards, back through centuries, back through ruins and ash, until you stand before the firelight of an ancient world. A world where perhaps, just perhaps, the line between myth and machine was never as wide as we imagine. Welcome to the Lost Blueprints of the Gods. Chapter 1. The Seduction of the Lost. History, as it is usually told, is a story of ascent, a straight line. We imagine humanity crawling out of the mud, discovering fire, inventing wheels, writing alphabets, building cities, then steadily rising until we reach ourselves, modern, enlightened, surrounded by technology. But what if that story is too neat, too clean? What if history is not a line, but a tide that swells, retreats, and rises again, carrying knowledge forward, only to pull it back beneath the surface, sometimes for centuries? This possibility is what seduces us about lost technologies. Imagine it. Thousands of years ago, hands just like ours may have discovered powers we believe to be exclusively modern. Electricity, not as lightning flashing in the sky, but as a force they could hold in jars and harness for rituals or devices. Metals forged so strong that even today metallurgists strain to replicate their brilliance. Machines built with such precision they seem like echoes from the future. These ideas captivate us because they pull against the pride we carry as moderns. We like to believe we are unique, the first true age of science, the first age to pierce the mysteries of the world. But what if that is a lie? What if we are simply the latest? You can feel this seduction in the stories we whisper about Atlantis, a continent swallowed by the sea, yet rumored to have wielded energies and crystals unknown to us. You can feel it in the speculation around the Ark of the Covenant, not merely a holy chest, but perhaps a weapon humming with unseen power. You can hear it in the endless arguments about the pyramids, tombs, or something else, power stations, resonance structures, machines. The seduction is not just about what was lost, but about what it means if it was ever real. Because if knowledge can vanish, then progress is not guaranteed. If advanced ideas can disappear once, they can disappear again. And suddenly, we are not standing on a permanent summit, but on fragile ground, balanced over centuries of forgotten experiments. Consider the Baghdad Battery. At first glance, it is a clay jar, unremarkable. Yet inside, traces of copper and iron suggest it could function as a crude galvanic cell, a simple battery. Was it a coincidence, an accident of design, or was it deliberate, a forgotten experiment with electricity, lost long before Benjamin Franklin flew his kite in the storm? Then there is the Antikythera Mechanism, a bronze device pulled from a shipwreck more than 2,000 years old. Its gears are cut with such precision that, when reconstructed, it is revealed to be a mechanical computer capable of predicting eclipses, mapping the motions of the heavens, and tracking celestial cycles. A machine so intricate that nothing comparable would be built for over 1,000 years. Or Damascus steel, a metal once famed for its sharpness, resilience, and near-mythical properties. The process to create it was known in the Middle Ages, then forgotten, lost to time. Today, metallurgists try to reverse engineer it, scanning microstructures, searching manuscripts. Yet, the secret remains elusive. Each of these examples is not proof, but suggestion, not certainty, but temptation. They whisper, perhaps there was more, and that whisper is powerful because it reshapes how we see ourselves. If the ancients could stumble upon electricity, astronomy, metallurgy, what else might they have known? What else might have been lost in the flames of conquest, in the ashes of libraries, in the collapse of empires? That is why we are drawn, again and again, to stories of lost civilizations. They are not just about mystery. They are about humility. They remind us that our place in history is not secure, that memory is fragile, and that forgetting may be as powerful as discovery. The seduction of the lost tells us that the world is stranger than we imagine. That knowledge is not a straight road, but a labyrinth, and that somewhere in the shadows, buried in dust and legend, the ruins may be keeping secrets that, if rediscovered, could change everything we think we know about ourselves. Chapter 2. The Ashes of Alexandria. If knowledge can be lost, then perhaps the greatest symbol of that loss lies not in myth, but in history itself, the Library of Alexandria, a name that carries weight like a ghost echoing across centuries. A place where the wisdom of entire civilizations was gathered together, only to vanish in fire and ash. According to the stories, the library was vast beyond comprehension. Scrolls brought from India, from Greece, from Mesopotamia, from Egypt itself. Texts on medicine, mathematics, astronomy, geography, engineering. A collection so immense that some estimates suggest hundreds of thousands of works may have been stored there. Imagine it. A single building that could have contained the blueprints of forgotten worlds, not just myths and stories, but diagrams, treatises, experiments, ideas too advanced for their time. The library is gone now, burned, destroyed, lost to war and accident. But its shadow lingers in our imagination because we cannot help but wonder what knowledge died with it. Was it simply poetry, philosophy, and histories? Or were there scrolls describing technologies we would not reinvent until centuries later? Schematics for machines, notes on alchemy, calculations of the stars so precise they might rival our own. Consider this. We know that Greek thinkers like Archimedes were already exploring mechanical engineering, pulleys, levers, even weapons of war with astonishing ingenuity. We know that Egyptian medicine included surgical techniques and plant-based remedies that would not be rediscovered in Europe until the Renaissance. We know that Indian mathematicians understood concepts of zero and infinity long before they reached the Western world. What if all of this knowledge was gathered together in one place, preserved, copied, shared, and then erased? The story of the library is not just about fire. It is about fragility. Because fire is always waiting. Knowledge, unless protected, can vanish in a single night. Some say Julius Caesar's troops burned the library during the siege of Alexandria. Others say it was later, under the Emperor Aurelian, or even in the reign of Theodosius, when pagan works were purged. Some blame the conquest of the city by Caliph Omar in the 7th century. The truth is unclear, and perhaps it does not matter. What matters is that the greatest repository of human memory was scattered, and the silence that followed was deafening. Think of it this way. The Renaissance, that explosion of art, science, discovery, was fueled in part by ancient texts rediscovered in dusty monasteries and old libraries, fragments of Greek and Roman thought that had survived the Middle Ages. If just a fraction of that knowledge could spark such a rebirth, what might have happened if the Library of Alexandria had survived intact? Would humanity have reached the Industrial Revolution 1,000 years earlier? Would space travel have begun in the 1600s? Would we now be speaking not of rediscovery, but of a continuity of knowledge stretching unbroken for millennia? The ashes of Alexandria remind us of a terrifying truth. Progress is not inevitable. It can be undone, it can be delayed, it can be burned, and once it is gone, there is no guarantee it will return. That is why this story seduces us, because when we imagine the library's shelves stretching into shadow, lined with scrolls now lost forever, we cannot help but wonder what secrets were erased. Were there treatises on energy, on forgotten sciences, on machines that would feel at home in our modern age? We do not know. We will never know. But the mystery is not simply about what was lost. It is about what it means that loss is possible at all, that civilization can advance and just as easily collapse, that the blueprints of the gods, if they ever existed, may already have turned to smoke. The Library of Alexandria is not just a ruin of the past. It is a warning to the present, a reminder that knowledge is fragile and that what we take for granted, our science, our technology, our progress, could vanish with frightening ease. And if it did once, perhaps it has happened more than once. Perhaps whole civilizations, now only whispers, carried their own libraries, their own blueprints, and left behind only fragments for us to puzzle over in the dark. Chapter 3. Echoes in Stone. When paper burns, when scrolls turn to ash, when words are silenced, sometimes knowledge hides in other places, not in ink, not in parchment, but in stone. Stone remembers. It does not crumble as easily as papyrus. It does not fade like parchment. Stone is stubborn, and perhaps this is why so many of the great mysteries of ancient civilizations are carved into rock, into monuments, into structures that still defy explanation even after thousands of years. Walk among the pyramids of Giza and you feel the weight of this enigma. We are told they were tombs, Yet when you stand at their base, the explanation feels thin. The precision of their alignment, the vast scale of their construction, the mysteries of their internal chambers, all of it suggests an understanding of mathematics, astronomy, and engineering that surpasses what we would expect from a Bronze Age society. The Great Pyramid, for instance, is aligned almost perfectly with the cardinal points of the compass. Its sides are oriented with an accuracy of less than a fraction of a degree. Even modern builders armed with GPS and lasers find such precision difficult on that scale. How was this possible thousands of years ago with copper chisels and rope? Or consider the way the pyramid's proportions mirror astronomical constants. The ratio of its perimeter to its height echoes the mathematical value of pi. The structure's dimensions reflect the scale of the Earth itself, almost as if the builders carried not only tools, but cosmic knowledge. Move west to the high plains of Peru, and you encounter Sacsayhuaman. There, massive stones fit together with such tightness that even a razor blade cannot slip between them. Some of these stones weigh over 100 tons, yet they are set into place with such precision that mortar was unnecessary. The walls curve and angle in ways that make them resistant to earthquakes, an engineering feat that feels centuries ahead of its time. And then there is Pumapunku, part of the Tiwanaku complex. Here, blocks of andesite and sandstone are carved into shapes so precise they resemble machine work. Intricate grooves, perfect right angles, interlocking joints, all carved into some of the hardest stone known. Today, with diamond tools, it would still be a challenge. So how were they made over 1,000 years ago? The echoes in stone do not end there. Stonehenge in England, Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, the giant Moai of Easter Island, all speak of cultures investing immense energy into monuments whose purpose is still debated. Temples tuned to solstices, circles aligned to the stars, pillars buried for thousands of years, covered in carvings of animals, constellations, symbols whose meanings we have not cracked. Some argue these are not mysteries at all, simply the result of time, manpower, and clever techniques now forgotten. Ropes, ramps, levers, patience, and perhaps that is true, perhaps. But the seduction lies in the gaps, in the little details that resist simple answers, the precision that seems excessive for ritual, the alignments that hint at astronomical knowledge far beyond the needs of farming, the carvings that resemble gears, grooves, or even schematics. If you listen closely, the stones whisper. They suggest that the ancients may have encoded their knowledge not in fragile scrolls, but in durable monuments. They may have built structures that acted not only as tombs or temples, but as blueprints, repositories of information hidden in geometry, proportion, and alignment. It is a tantalizing idea. Imagine the pyramids not only as monuments to kings, but as three-dimensional textbooks of mathematics and astronomy. Imagine Göbekli Tepe not only as a ritual site, but as a coded star map, recording constellations seen by ancestors who lived in a world we can scarcely imagine. Imagine Pumapunku as a workshop where tools or techniques long since vanished were demonstrated in stone. To walk among these ruins is to feel a strange tension. On one hand, they are silent. They do not explain themselves. On the other, they are loud with implication, heavy with suggestion. Because if the ancients could carve stone with such mastery, align monuments with the heavens, and encode proportions that mirror cosmic truths, what else might they have known? We stand before the echoes in stone, unable to translate them fully. But perhaps that is the point. Perhaps these monuments were never meant to be understood quickly. Perhaps they were designed to survive, to outlast fire, to wait, to carry their secrets across centuries until someone, someday, would have the patience to listen. And tonight, as we linger in their shadow, we are listening, not for answers, but for the possibility that the blueprints of the gods are not lost at all. They are written in stone, waiting for us to remember how to read them. Chapter 4. The Mystery of Metal. Fire. From the moment humanity first bent it to their will, fire became more than warmth, more than light. Fire was transformation, and perhaps nowhere is that transformation more mysterious than in the metals it revealed. For metals are the bones of technology, from the Bronze Age to the Iron Age to the digital circuits of today. Progress has always been measured in alloys, in the manipulation of Earth's hidden elements. But here too, the past is stranger than we admit, because there are metals known to the ancients that we, with all our furnaces and laboratories, still struggle to recreate. Consider Damascus steel. Once, blades forged in the Middle East carried a reputation bordering on the supernatural. They were said to slice through iron, to sever silk scarves dropped onto their edges, to retain sharpness where other swords dulled. Warriors prized them, empires feared them. The steel became legend. Today, metallurgists analyze surviving specimens, running electron microscopes across their surfaces, searching for the secret. We know they were made using crucible techniques, folding iron with carbon in precise ways, and yet the exact process, the rhythm of heating, cooling, folding, tempering, is gone, lost sometime in the 18th century. The secret of Damascus steel vanished, not because it was impossible, but because knowledge is fragile, passed by word of mouth, guarded by guilds, dependent on traditions. It slipped away when those traditions broke. And now, modern science still cannot fully reproduce the patterns and microstructures hidden in those legendary blades. Or take meteoric iron. Before smelting was widespread, before humans learned to pull iron from the ground, ancient cultures worked with the sky itself. Imagine a meteorite falls, a fragment of space rock carrying iron alloyed with nickel. To the ancients, it was a gift from the heavens, and they learned to shape it. In Egypt, beads made of meteoric iron were strung into jewelry thousands of years before the Iron Age. King Tutankhamun himself was buried with a dagger forged not from earthly ore, but from the stars. To hold such a blade was to hold the cosmos in your hand, and again, we are forced to ask, how did they do it? With what tools? With what methods? And what might it have meant to their understanding of the world? Then there are the whispers of other lost alloys, orichalcum, described by Plato as one of the prized metals of Atlantis. Was it myth, or was it an early attempt at a copper-zinc alloy, similar to brass, its shine mistaken for gold? Even in historical times, mysteries persist. Roman concrete, a material that grows stronger with time, resistant to the sea, surviving centuries of waves battering against it, remains more durable than many modern mixes. In India, the iron pillar of Delhi has stood for over 1,600 years without rusting, its composition and protective film still baffling metallurgists. The mystery of metal is not only about lost recipes, it is about the possibility that metallurgy itself, the mastery of fire, ore, and alloy, was a science older than we think. To shape stone is one thing. To shape metal is another. Metal requires not only strength, but heat, precision, chemistry. It demands a knowledge of temperatures, of mixtures, of invisible reactions. In its manipulation, there is a kind of alchemy, a transformation not just of matter, but of understanding. And so, when we hold a Damascus blade, when we trace the sky-forged iron in an ancient bead, when we walk past a pillar that resists rust while modern steel corrodes, we are not simply looking at objects. We are staring into windows of forgotten knowledge. Did the ancients stumble upon these discoveries by chance, or did they understand principles we no longer remember? Were there lost traditions of metallurgy, entire systems of thought, erased by time and conquest? These questions gnaw at us because they carry an uncomfortable implication that progress does not only move forward, that secrets can vanish, that even in an age of satellites and supercomputers, we may still be chasing the shadows of discoveries our ancestors once held in their hands. The mystery of metal is a reminder. A blade, a bead, a pillar. These are not only artifacts, they are warnings carved in fire, proof that knowledge, once lost, can be harder to recover than to invent. And perhaps, if there truly were blueprints of the gods, if there truly were ages of technology before ours, then the first evidence we would see would not be circuits or engines. It would be metal, forged in fire, hardened in secrecy, and left behind, waiting to be rediscovered. Chapter 5. Fire and Light. Long before electricity, long before the hum of circuits, light was still a mystery humanity sought to tame. Fire was the first. Fire was survival. Fire was the line between darkness and safety. But fire was also more. It was the first technology of illumination, the first energy we could both create and control. Yet in the records of ancient civilizations, fire does not appear merely as flame. Again and again, there are whispers of fire transformed, of fire used in ways that feel strangely advanced. The Greeks told stories of a weapon so fearsome it was called liquid fire, Greek fire, as it is now known, a substance hurled in battle, clinging to ships, to armor, to flesh, refusing to be extinguished even by water. To the enemies of Byzantium, it was terror made manifest. To the empire, it was salvation, turning the tide of sieges and naval wars. What was it? We do not know. The formula was a state secret, guarded for centuries, then lost. Some suggest it was a form of petroleum mixed with quicklime, sulfur, or pine resin. Others argue it was something else entirely, a chemistry we have yet to fully reconstruct. Even today, recreations fall short of the descriptions. And so, Greek fire joins the long list of mysteries, a reminder that sometimes the ancients wielded flames in ways that eclipse our certainty. But fire was not always destructive. In temples, it was sacred, eternal. The eternal flame burned not only as symbol, but perhaps as something more. In Egypt, legends speak of lights that glowed within tombs, sealed for centuries, yet when opened, the lamps still burned. Roman historians recorded such stories with fascination and skepticism. Lamps said to shine without oil, without smoke. Alchemists in later centuries tried to reproduce them, claiming formulas of phosphorescent mixtures, self-sustaining flames. Were these exaggerations, or could there have been experiments in chemical luminescence now forgotten? Then there are the mysteries of mirrors and lenses. The ancients were not blind to the power of reflection and focus. In China, mirrors were polished so finely they seemed to hold light within them, reflecting not only images but hidden designs etched on their backs. In Greece, stories tell of Archimedes using mirrors to set enemy ships aflame, concentrating sunlight into deadly beams. Some call it legend, others, experiments, suggest it is possible under the right conditions. And in Egypt, again, depictions on temple walls show figures holding objects some interpret as dendera light bulbs, long oval shapes resembling lamps connected by lines to what could be mistaken for power sources. Mainstream archaeology insists these are symbolic carvings, lotus flowers, serpents, mythological motifs. But the resemblance to modern tubes of light tempts the imagination. What if the ancients did discover ways to capture or channel light beyond fire? What if mirrors, lenses, chemicals, and perhaps even rudimentary electricity were part of their sacred knowledge, now disguised as myth? We must be cautious. Skeptics argue that stories of everlasting lamps were simply misunderstandings, that Greek fire was nothing more than clever chemistry, that the dendera carvings are pure symbolism. Perhaps they are right. Perhaps all of it is coincidence, myth, exaggeration. But the seduction of these tales is that they hint at something deeper. They suggest that fire and light were not only tools of survival, but frontiers of exploration, that ancient minds may have been reaching, not only for warmth, not only for flame, but for illumination itself, for energy, for the ability to bend light to their will. Imagine a world where a temple glowed with lamps that never dimmed. Imagine mirrors angled to track the sun, to concentrate heat, to light fires at impossible distances. Imagine flames that clung to wood and water alike, terrifying armies and reshaping empires. Approximately 1,280 words. Close your eyes and imagine the world not as sight, but as sound. The hum of the earth beneath your feet, the whistle of wind threading through stone, the rhythm of your own heartbeat pulsing like a drum. To the ancients, sound was not just a byproduct of life. It was life. It was power. And perhaps it was technology. Let us begin with the myths. Across cultures, creation itself is described as sound. In Hindu tradition, the universe begins with the syllable Om, a vibration resonating through nothingness. In the Bible, God speaks the world into being. Let there be light. The Egyptians told of Ptah, who brought creation forth by uttering names. To create by sound, to shape reality with vibration, was once considered the most divine act. But was it only metaphor? Or was it memory of something real? Consider this. Sound is vibration. Vibration moves matter. With enough force, with the right frequency, vibration can shatter glass, shake bridges, topple buildings. Today, we know this as resonance, the natural frequency at which objects begin to vibrate uncontrollably. If the ancients understood this, even intuitively, could they have used it? Whispers suggest they did. Legends tell of stones lifted by sound, of instruments that moved mountains. The Tibetan monks speak of chanting that makes rocks tremble. In medieval Arab texts, there are accounts of builders using trumpets to raise heavy blocks into the air. Folklore, say the skeptics. But again, why such persistent stories? At Saqqara in Egypt, the Serapeum tunnels contain massive granite boxes, each weighing over 70 tons, polished to near perfection. How were they moved, carved, placed with such accuracy? One theory, fringe but intriguing, is that resonance was used, vibrating the stone until it became easier to shift. Acoustic archaeology reveals that many ancient sites are tuned. The hypogeum of Hal Saflieni in Malta, a subterranean temple, resonates at 111 Hz. Chant there, and the entire chamber vibrates, amplifying sound far beyond expectation. Why that frequency? Coincidence? Or was it chosen deliberately? Perhaps to alter states of consciousness, perhaps to heal, perhaps to do something more. Stonehenge, too, behaves like an acoustic chamber. Clap, sing, or strike a drum within the circle, and the sound is magnified, bouncing in patterns that seem almost designed. At Chavin de Huantar in Peru, underground canals channel rushing water that roars like thunder through stone passages, creating an immersive, disorienting soundscape. Sound was not decoration, it was structure. Even the Great Pyramid holds secrets of resonance. Acoustic tests reveal that certain chambers amplify and sustain tones. Some researchers propose that the pyramid itself was designed as a giant resonant device, not a tomb, but a machine, capturing and focusing vibrations. If true, what was its purpose? To heal, to communicate, to connect with the cosmos itself. Ancient instruments add to the mystery. The bull roarer, used by indigenous Australians, produces a low, whirring drone that travels for miles. Conch shells, discovered in ancient temples, produce haunting tones that vibrate deep within the body. Drums, flutes, harps, yes, music, but also medicine, ritual, and perhaps something more. In modern science, sound has rediscovered its power. Ultrasound breaks apart kidney stones. Sonic levitation lifts small objects. Frequencies can accelerate healing, influence mood, alter brain waves. Cymatics, the study of vibration patterns, shows sand dancing into intricate geometries when exposed to sound. The ancients could not see these patterns, but perhaps they felt them, intuited them, lived by them. Myths of sound as weapon linger too. The Jericho trumpets that brought walls crashing down. The shouts of armies described as storms of thunder. The Greek story of Amphion, whose music moved stones to build Thebes. Are these just poetic exaggerations, or memories of resonance pushed to terrifying extremes? Imagine, for a moment, standing in an ancient temple. Drums pounding, voices chanting in unison, stone walls humming as if alive. The air itself vibrating, your chest resonating until you feel part of the sound. In that moment, you would not doubt its power. You would know that sound was more than music. It was energy. It was transformation. Some even whisper that entire monuments were built with this force, not with ropes and ramps, but with frequencies tuned to lift and move. Tales from Tibet describe lamas using horns and chants to raise stones. Legends of Egypt speak of priests with voices that shook the air. Impossible, say the skeptics. And yet, is it so different from what we now explore in laboratories? Sound lifting drops of water, sound guiding light itself. The ancients may not have had oscilloscopes, but they had patience, intuition, and generations of observation. Perhaps they discovered frequencies by trial, by ritual, by reverence, and once found, those frequencies became sacred, not just notes, but keys to hidden doors. Tonight, think of the universe as a song, planets orbiting like notes in a cosmic symphony, stars vibrating in frequencies we cannot hear, yet which ripple across space, the very atoms of your body humming with energy, each proton and electron vibrating at unimaginable speeds. Everything is sound, everything is resonance, everything is music. The ancients knew. They may not have said it in our language, but they felt it in their stones, in their temples, in their myths. The music of the spheres, as Pythagoras called it, was not poetry. It was physics, and perhaps once it was also technology. So the question remains, did ancient civilizations merely use sound for ritual and beauty, or did they know how to wield it as power, to heal, to build, to destroy? Did they hide their knowledge in chants, in instruments, in stone chambers that still hum with forgotten frequencies? We cannot say for sure, but listen closely the next time you sit in silence. You will hear it, the faint hum of the world, the vibration that never stops, the ancient song that still plays, waiting for us to remember the music of the spheres. Rhea Temple glowed with lamps that never dimmed. Imagine mirrors angled to track the sun, to concentrate heat, to light fires at impossible distances. Imagine flames that clung to wood and water alike, terrifying armies and reshaping empires. Fire and light were never simple. They were symbols of knowledge itself. To possess fire was to possess power. To control light was to touch the divine. And if some of those secrets have slipped into the cracks of history, it would not be the first time, nor the last. In the end, what we glimpse are fragments, burned ships on dark seas, legends of lamps in sealed tombs, carvings that resemble modern bulbs, and mirrors that catch the sun like weapons. They are not proof, but they are possibilities. Possibilities that suggest the ancients may have understood fire and light in ways that went beyond survival, beyond ritual, into the realm of technology. And if even part of this is true, then once again we must confront the same question. What else have we forgotten? Chapter 6. The Power of Sound. A force invisible, intangible, yet powerful enough to shake stone, to soothe the mind, to terrify the heart. We think of sound as something ordinary, the voices around us, the hum of machines, the music in our ears. But sound is more than that. It is vibration. It is resonance. It is energy carried through air, through water, through stone itself. And once you think of sound as energy, the ancient world begins to look very different. Take the megalithic temples of Malta, structures built thousands of years ago. Their stone chambers resonate in ways that seem more than accidental. Within the hypogeum of Halsafliani, a subterranean temple, the sound of a deep male voice can echo and vibrate in a manner that penetrates the body. Modern researchers tested this, finding that the chambers amplify frequencies between 90 and 120 hertz. That is not coincidence. That is design. A design that interacts directly with human biology, with the bones in our chest, with the brain itself. Who built this? Why? Was it ritual? Was it medicine? Was it a technology of sound meant to induce trance, to heal, to alter states of mind? Move across the world to the temples of ancient Egypt. Some researchers believe the great structures, the pyramids, the chambers within Karnak and Luxor, are tuned to acoustic resonance. Clap your hands, chant a tone, and the vibrations seem to linger, to amplify. Imagine priests chanting in unison, their voices multiplied by stone, creating a wall of sound that overwhelms the senses. Was this theater, religion, or something more experimental? A way to harness resonance to shift perception? And what about the idea, whispered in both legend and pseudoscience, that sound was not only for ritual, but for construction? Ancient tales speak of massive stones lifted by song, floated into place by the resonance of trumpets or chanting. Tibet has legends of monks using horns and drums to levitate rocks. The stories are dismissed by most as myth, and yet, when you hear the accounts of archaeologists standing in places like Baalbek, staring at stones weighing hundreds of tons, you can't help but wonder, how did they move them? What tools were strong enough? And could resonance, sound harnessed in ways we do not yet understand, have played a role? Consider the experiments of modern science. Ultrasound can shatter kidney stones without a scalpel. High-frequency sound can levitate small objects in laboratory settings. Sound can alter matter. Sound can move it. If we can do it now, in small controlled settings, why not imagine that ancient engineers stumbled upon principles of resonance far earlier? Perhaps their methods were cruder, but effective. Perhaps they left no machines behind because their machines were the human voice, the drum, the horn, amplified by the geometry of stone. There is also the darker side of sound. Infrasound, frequencies too low for us to hear, can cause unease, fear, even nausea. It can make you feel that a place is haunted, that shadows move where they should not. Was this known to temple builders? Did they deliberately tune their sacred spaces to such frequencies, to evoke awe or terror in the faithful? And then there is sound as healing. In India, the chanting of mantras has long been tied to health and spiritual clarity. In Greece, Pythagoras taught the music of the spheres, suggesting that harmony and vibration underpin all reality. In modern times, sound therapy resurfaces, echoing those old traditions. Tuning forks, singing bowls, binaural beats. It seems humanity has always sensed that sound is more than sensation. It is influence. Influence over the body, the mind, perhaps even over matter. Skeptics warn us not to stretch too far. The idea of levitating stones with trumpets has no clear evidence. The resonance of temples might be coincidental, a side effect of architecture, not a deliberate design. And yet, the precision is difficult to dismiss. The alignments, the frequencies, the recurring presence of acoustics in sacred spaces, again and again, across cultures separated by oceans and centuries. When patterns repeat, we are wise to pay attention. Picture it, an ancient ritual in Malta, a low chant filling the underground chambers, the sound vibrating in your bones until you slip into trance. Or a priest in Egypt leading chants inside a temple, the voices reverberating, overwhelming, shaping the minds of worshippers. Or Perhaps most tantalizing, engineers of old using horns, chants, and drums to manipulate resonance, nudging massive stones across landscapes in ways that today would take cranes and diesel engines. Perhaps we are chasing shadows, or perhaps we are glimpsing fragments of a science long forgotten, a science that saw sound not merely as music, but as power. Fire gave light, sound gave vibration. Both were forces that reshaped the world, and both remind us that technology does not always leave behind machines. Sometimes technology leaves behind only stories, stories of temples that hum, of songs that lift stones, of rituals that move the soul. The ancients knew sound. The question is, did they know more than we think? Chapter 7. The Machines of Stone. Stones do not move themselves, and yet across the world, from deserts to jungles to high mountain plateaus, we find them. Stones the size of houses, carved, shaped, stacked, and aligned with a precision that defies not only imagination, but explanation. The simplest question, how, echoes louder with each site we examine. Let us begin with Baalbek in modern-day Lebanon. There lies the trilithon, 3 stones each weighing over 800 tons, set side by side in a foundation wall. Nearby, in the quarry, rests the stone of the pregnant woman, a monolith weighing more than 1,000 tons, never fully transported. To put this in perspective, moving such masses with modern cranes requires enormous effort. Yet these stones were positioned thousands of years ago, without diesel engines, without steel cables. How did they do it? Some suggest vast armies of laborers, ropes, and wooden rollers. Perhaps, but anyone who has studied the terrain, the hills, the inclines, the sheer logistics, walks away unsettled. Was brute force enough, or was there another method? Then, shift your gaze to Peru. Pumapunku, part of the Tiwanaku complex, presents a riddle carved not in size but in precision. Massive blocks of andesite and red sandstone, some weighing 100 tons, are cut into interlocking H shapes, notched and grooved as if shaped by giant stoneworking tools. The cuts are sharp, the angles perfect, as though manufactured rather than carved. The stones fit together like pieces of a puzzle, no mortar, no gaps. Even today, replicating such work with this hardness of stone would demand diamond-tipped saws, lasers, or computer-guided machining. Yet the people of the Andes, long before the Incas, achieved it. Was this merely craftsmanship at its peak? Or were there techniques, lost, forgotten, that allowed stone to be worked like clay? Travel north to England. Stonehenge stands in lonely fields, its giant sarsen stones transported from miles away, its blue stones carried, somehow, from quarries in Wales nearly 150 miles distant. The stones were erected in careful circles, aligned to solstices, the rising and setting of the sun. Again, we ask, why? Ritual, astronomy, both. And yet, the deeper question remains, how? How did they drag such masses across rivers, hills, forests? And why did they feel compelled to create structures that function almost like celestial machines, devices that tracked the heavens with unerring accuracy? Again and again, stone becomes more than stone. Consider the Great Pyramid of Giza. It is not simply a tomb. Its alignment to true north is astonishingly precise. Its dimensions encode mathematical constants, pi, the golden ratio. Its chambers echo with resonance. Some researchers even suggest its internal shafts were not symbolic, but functional, channeling air, water, or energy in ways we do not yet understand. If you strip away the assumption that it was merely a grave, what remains looks uncomfortably like a machine of stone, built to perform a task we have not yet identified. Machines do not always need gears or pistons. Machines are systems designed to perform functions. Could it be that these monuments, these massive stone constructs, were not only ceremonial, but functional? Could they have harnessed the environment, the earth itself, the cosmos? Skeptics will remind us, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. They argue that stones can be moved with enough ropes, levers, and determination, that angles can be cut with copper chisels, patience, and sand, that alignments are coincidences born of long trial and error. Perhaps, and yet the scale persists, the precision persists across continents and centuries. Baalbek, Pumapunku, Stonehenge, Giza, four corners of the world united by puzzles of stone. Imagine, if you will, massive blocks vibrating, softened by sound or heat, shifted into place not with brute force but with knowledge. Imagine chisels tipped with materials we have lost, cutting stone as if it were wood. Imagine circles of stone acting not only as temples, but as observatories, calendars, even computers of a kind. If true, then what we call monuments may have been more. They may have been devices, machines whose functions are obscured because we no longer understand the operating system of the ancients. And if that is the case, then the question is not only how they were built, but why. Why construct a foundation of 1,000-ton stones? Why carve blocks into interlocking shapes more complex than necessary? Why align monuments with the stars, the solstices, the Earth's magnetic field? These were not accidents. These were choices, deliberate, repeated across civilizations. When machines break, we see only fragments, gears, wires, circuits. To the untrained eye, they look meaningless. To the one who knows, they tell a story of function. What if we are standing in the ruins of ancient machines, mistaking them for mere monuments? The stones are silent. They do not reveal their secrets. But silence does not mean absence. It means waiting. Waiting for us to ask the right questions. Waiting for us to recognize that perhaps, long ago, humanity built machines of stone and then lost the blueprint. Chapter 8. Forgotten Metallurgy. Stone lasts, but metals tell us something deeper. Metals are the lifeblood of technology. They are weapons, tools, conduits. To work with metal is to cross a threshold from survival into mastery. And when we look into the metallurgical past, we find not a straight line of progress, but strange peaks, sudden, dazzling advancements that appear, then vanish, leaving behind mysteries that should not exist. Consider Damascus steel, legendary, almost mythical. For centuries, blades forged from this process were said to cut through lesser weapons with ease, to slice silk in mid-air, to remain sharp beyond comparison. The knights of Europe feared it. The warriors of the Middle East wielded it as both tool and symbol of power. What made it so extraordinary? Modern metallurgists have tried to replicate it, and some have come close. The secret, it seems, lay in the forging of Wootz steel, imported from India, combined with a method of heating, folding, and cooling that introduced carbon nanotube-like structures within the metal. Yes, nanotubes. Microscopic formations that we associate with cutting-edge nanotechnology were appearing unintentionally in the forges of medieval smiths. How did they stumble upon this? Was it accident? Was it intuition? Or was it knowledge passed down, preserved in secret guilds, then lost when trade routes shifted and wars consumed the keepers of the craft? Now, let us travel to India again, to the Iron Pillar of Delhi. Over 1,600 years old, this massive column of iron stands exposed to rain, sun, monsoon, and yet resists corrosion. Modern iron rusts within years if unprotected, yet this ancient pillar remains intact, a silent sentinel of forgotten chemistry. Analysis suggests a high phosphorus content, a crystalline film that renews itself, a protective rust, paradoxically preventing decay. But ask yourself, was this just a lucky recipe or a deliberate formula that has been lost? Why does this metallurgical trick not appear again for centuries until modern science rediscovers advanced alloying techniques? Then there is orichalcum, mentioned by Plato as one of the prized metals of Atlantis, long dismissed as pure myth. Yet in 2015, a shipwreck off Sicily yielded ingots analyzed as an unusual copper-zinc alloy, unlike typical brass, with a distinct composition. Did this represent a lost tradition of alloy making? Was orichalcum not myth, but memory? Or look to South America. Artifacts of gold and copper alloys were worked with astonishing skill by the Moche and Inca civilizations. They performed electroplating, gilding, surface treatments we assumed were modern inventions, and some suggest they worked with forms of tumbaga, alloys that behaved in ways our textbooks rarely describe. Time and again, metallurgy surprises us. Techniques emerge centuries, even millennia, before we believe they should. They appear in one place, shine brightly, then vanish. Knowledge is not cumulative. Knowledge is fragile. A war, a plague, the death of a single master can snap the thread. Skeptics will say, there is nothing mysterious here. Damascus steel was simply lost when the crucible steel trade collapsed. The iron pillar is explained by environmental chemistry. Orichalcum is just a variant of brass. Gold plating is clever craftsmanship. All true. But the bigger picture is more curious. Why did these advancements not spread widely? Why were they not preserved continuously? Unless perhaps they were guarded secrets, deliberately withheld, or unless they were fragments of older knowledge that appeared not as invention, but as survival, a rediscovery. Imagine for a moment the possibilities. Imagine if Damascus steel had not been lost, if its nanotube-like structures had been refined, expanded. Imagine if rust-proof iron had become the standard 1,000 years ago, reshaping architecture, bridges, machines. Imagine if alloys unknown to us had circulated, their properties fueling technologies centuries before the industrial age. Our history would be different, our trajectory altered, and that brings us to the most haunting thought of all. Perhaps it did happen once, and we simply don't remember. Perhaps there were peaks of metallurgical mastery, civilizations whose metals shone brighter than we imagine, whose forges burned hotter, whose techniques rivaled ours in ways we struggle to admit. The artifacts remain: a blade that cuts impossibly well, a pillar that refuses to rust, ingots that defy categorization, goldwork that gleams with electrochemical treatment. Each is a whisper, a fragment of something larger. If metals are the bones of technology, then these fragments are fossils of forgotten mastery. The ancients were not blind. They saw how fire transformed rock into something new, something stronger, something alive with possibility. They learned to tame it, to fold it, to mix it, and sometimes, just sometimes, they achieved results that make us pause even today. Perhaps metallurgy is where we glimpse most clearly the truth of lost blueprints, for metal does not lie. Metal endures, and in its enduring, it tells us, we were here. We knew more than you think. We forged secrets in fire, and when the flames died, so too did memory. Yet the relics remain, waiting for us to listen. Chapter 9: Ancient Energy Sources. When we think of electricity, we think of wires, copper coils, glowing bulbs. We imagine Benjamin Franklin with his kite, Edison with his lamps, Tesla with his coils of lightning. But what if the spark of electricity, the harnessing of unseen energy, was not a modern discovery at all? What if, long before dynamos and batteries, ancient hands had stumbled upon ways to channel currents, to create sparks, to store power? Consider the Baghdad Battery, unearthed near modern-day Iraq. This clay jar dates back over 2 millennia. Inside were found traces of copper and iron, separated by bitumen. Alone, it looks mundane. Together, it resembles nothing less than a simple galvanic cell, a battery. If filled with an acidic solution like vinegar, such a device could produce a small electric charge, enough to shock, enough to electroplate metals, enough to hint at knowledge we assumed did not exist until thousands of years later. Was it a curiosity, a mistake, or was it deliberate? Were these batteries used to gild artifacts, to create electrochemical reactions, to demonstrate the invisible magic of power? Now look to Egypt again, where the so-called Dendera light bulb carvings stir endless speculation. Figures hold shapes resembling elongated bulbs, with cords extending to what looks like a power source. Mainstream scholars insist these are symbolic: lotus flowers, serpents. Yet the resemblance to electrical tubes is uncanny. If one knows what electricity looks like, it is difficult not to see it. Of course, symbols deceive, but symbols also preserve memory. Is it possible that what we dismiss as religious imagery is, in truth, a faded diagram of a forgotten experiment? Then there is the Ark of the Covenant, described in the Hebrew Bible as a wooden chest overlaid with gold, topped with 2 golden cherubim, a sacred vessel, untouchable, carried with poles, deadly to those who approached uninvited. Some theorists have suggested the Ark functioned as a kind of electrical capacitor, gold and wood layered like a giant Leyden jar, capable of storing static charge, a box of divine fire, a technology mistaken for divinity. Skeptical, perhaps, but the descriptions are curious. A chest that struck down those who touched it, that emitted fire, that was said to part rivers. Is this simply metaphor, or memory of a device that could channel energy in ways few understood? Across the world, we also find stories of energy tied not to artifacts, but to landscapes. The concept of ley lines, invisible currents running across the earth, persists in folklore. Ancient sites, from Stonehenge to Machu Picchu, seem aligned along mysterious grids. Were these coincidences, or evidence that the ancients felt energy in the land, mapping it, building upon it? And what of lightning itself? Cultures worshipped it, feared it, tried to capture it. The Greeks imagined Zeus hurling bolts. The Norse invoked Thor's hammer. In India, Indra wielded the thunderbolt. To worship lightning is natural, but to worship is also to experiment. Did they try to trap it, to store it? Did temples act as giant conductors, their towering obelisks and spires drawing down power from the skies? Modern science has shown us how easily energy can be hidden in plain sight. A jar becomes a battery. A coil of wire becomes a motor. A layered box becomes a capacitor. Is it so impossible that ancient minds, through trial and error, stumbled upon these same truths, only to lose them when wars, plagues, and time swept the knowledge away? Skeptics scoff. The Baghdad Battery may have been nothing more than a storage jar. The Ark was symbolic, not electrical. The Dendera carvings are misread mythology. And perhaps they are right. Perhaps all of these are misinterpretations. But again, the patterns whisper. Again, the coincidences stack. Again, we find ourselves wondering, if these were only symbols, why do they echo so strongly the devices we know today? Imagine if electricity had been mastered, even in rudimentary form 2,000 years ago. Imagine lamps burning without flame in Egyptian temples. Imagine artisans electroplating gold with small clay batteries. Imagine a sacred chest that crackled with divine fire. History as we know it would be transformed. Perhaps it was. Perhaps, for brief moments, the ancients glimpsed the same spark we wield today. Perhaps they lit their lamps, shocked their apprentices, marveled at the invisible force. But without infrastructure, without continuity, the spark died. The fire was forgotten. The world dimmed again into candlelight. And yet, the artifacts remain. A clay jar, a carved wall, a golden chest described in ancient text. Each whispers of energy, each hints at power. We stand in the modern world, surrounded by wires and screens, and imagine ourselves the first to harness electricity. But what if we are only the latest, What if the spark was struck long before, in workshops and temples, in deserts and mountains, in silence and secrecy? The ancients may not have built power plants, but they may have built power into myth, into ritual, into sacred objects, and perhaps, in their own way, they too held lightning in their hands. Chapter 10. Mapping the Heavens. When night falls, the sky becomes our oldest screen. Long before parchment or ink, before chisels on stone, humanity wrote its stories in constellations. Every culture, from the frozen tundra to the desert sands, gazed upward and saw not random lights, but patterns, gods, beasts, maps. The stars are eternal teachers. They rise and fall in cycles, mark the seasons, guide migrations. Yet some ancient star maps go beyond mere survival. They suggest something more: precision, intention, knowledge that rivals even modern astronomy. Consider the Great Pyramid of Giza, built over 4,500 years ago. Its shafts align almost perfectly with key stars in Orion's belt and Sirius. The pyramid is not just a tomb, it is an observatory, a frozen compass, a machine made of stone that points eternally toward the heavens. How did builders without telescopes or satellites achieve such alignment with sub-degree accuracy? Move east to China, where oracle bones and bamboo scrolls record eclipses with stunning precision. As early as 700 BC, astronomers there not only tracked lunar and solar cycles, but predicted them. Today, we use supercomputers to model such events. They did it with observation and intuition, or perhaps with tools now lost to time. Across the ocean, the Mayans etched their knowledge into codices. They charted Venus with obsessive detail, predicting its cycles with accuracy modern science only confirmed centuries later. For them, Venus was more than a planet. It was a clock in the sky, a cosmic pendulum guiding rituals, wars, and calendars. At Nabta Playa, a site deep in the Egyptian desert predating Stonehenge by millennia, a circle of stones aligns with the rising of specific stars. Some scholars argue it functioned as an ancient calendar, marking solstices and guiding pastoralists in their seasonal migrations. The Dogon people of Mali tell stories of Sirius, not just the bright star visible to the naked eye, but its companion star, Sirius B, invisible without telescopes. Western astronomers only confirmed Sirius B in the 19th century. Yet the Dogon myths, passed orally, describe its orbit and density with uncanny accuracy. Coincidence? A memory of ancient observation? Or a tale seeded from somewhere or someone else? Mainstream science urges caution. Oral traditions evolve, archaeological alignments can be selective, and chance plays tricks on pattern-seeking minds. Yet when we step back, when we see the sheer volume of alignments, stories, calculations across cultures, one question arises: were the ancients simply brilliant observers, or did they have instruments now lost to history? Take the Antikythera Mechanism, recovered from a Greek shipwreck over a century ago. This corroded bronze device, with its intricate gears, turned out to be nothing less than a mechanical computer. Built over 2,000 years ago, it tracked the movements of the sun, moon, and planets, predicting eclipses and astronomical cycles. It is a pocket-sized planetarium, crafted with sophistication thought impossible until the Renaissance. If one such device survived the sea, how many more were built and lost? Was the Antikythera Mechanism a lone wonder, or the remnant of a forgotten tradition of scientific craftsmanship? Imagine the implications: sailors navigating oceans with portable planetariums, priests timing rituals with mechanical calendars, kings ruling with knowledge of eclipses that seemed like divine prophecy. To control the stars, or even to predict them, was to wield power. The heavens were also temples. Consider Teotihuacan in Mexico, its grand avenue of the dead aligned to celestial events. Or Chaco Canyon in New Mexico, where windows and rock markers track solstices with precision. These sites are not random. They are calendars in stone, observatories built for eternity. And yet, who was watching whom? Did ancient people merely look upward, or did they believe something was looking back? For many myths speak not just of stars, but of beings from the stars, gods descending in fiery chariots, visitors teaching agriculture, architecture, mathematics. Were the constellations simply symbols or coordinates left as a memory of contact? Suspicion deepens when we consider the Piri Reis map, a 16th century chart that allegedly shows parts of Antarctica without ice. If accurate, and some dispute this, it suggests ancient cartographers knew the world from a vantage point high above, perhaps even orbital, but whether true or not, it illustrates a deeper point. Knowledge is fragile, maps vanish, archives burn, and yet fragments survive like whispers of a grander design. In modern times, we take star maps for granted. We can download the heavens into our phones, zoom into galaxies with telescopes mounted in orbit. But for the ancients, this was sacred labor. Every night was a classroom, every eclipse a revelation. And what they achieved without electricity, without computers, without optics, remains staggering. The ancients saw the sky as a book, one that could be read, one that contained secrets. But perhaps they saw more than we allow ourselves to admit. Perhaps they recorded more than stories. Perhaps they mapped more than stars. And so, we are left with a tantalizing thought. The heavens may not just have guided their crops and calendars. They may have inspired technologies, rituals, and myths that still ripple into our present. When you look up tonight, know that you are sharing a gaze across thousands of years. The same stars, the same alignments, the same cosmic puzzles. The ancients saw them too. They mapped them. And in those maps, we may find not just their beliefs, but their blueprints, their attempts to reach beyond the earth, to capture the eternal, to understand the infinite. Chapter 11. The Machines of Myth. Mythology is often treated as metaphor, symbolic stories meant to explain natural forces, human fears, or the mysteries of existence. But what if some myths contain not allegory, but memory? What if the strange machines described in ancient texts were not merely poetic, but actual technologies, mechanical marvels now lost to time? Begin with Greece, the land of philosophers and storytellers. In the tale of Jason and the Argonauts, a massive bronze guardian named Talos patrolled the island of Crete. He circled its shores, hurling boulders at intruders. His body, forged of gleaming metal, contained a single vein sealed with a bronze nail. Within it flowed ichor, not blood, but some mysterious life fluid that gave him motion. To us, this sounds like myth. To an engineer, it sounds like hydraulics, like a system powered by fluid pressure, a mechanical automaton described centuries before clockwork existed. The Greeks also spoke of Hephaestus, god of fire and craft, who built golden handmaidens that moved, spoke, and assisted him in his forge. Myths of robots, written 2,000 years before robotics was even conceived. Were these simply the dreams of a culture fascinated by craft, or distorted memories of actual mechanical inventions? Move east to India, where Sanskrit epics describe yantras, mechanical devices and war machines. Some texts mention moving statues that could guard temples, metallic birds that could fly, chariots that moved without horses. Were these allegories, or did ancient artisans experiment with gears, pulleys, and simple engines long before Da Vinci? In Egypt, temples were filled with wonders that amazed visitors. Heron of Alexandria, an engineer in the 1st century AD, described and built machines that worked by steam pressure, hidden pipes, and counterweights. His Aeolipile, a sphere that spun when steam escaped, was a proto-steam engine. He created doors that opened automatically when fires were lit on altars, and statues that poured wine into cups. Religious miracles powered by mechanics. If Heron could do this in the 1st century, what lost engineers may have done similar centuries earlier? Chinese chronicles also speak of marvels, mechanical birds that sang, wooden men that could walk, even a legendary automaton that entertained emperors. Records suggest that by the 3rd century BC, engineers were experimenting with mechanical animals. Some may have been toys, some perhaps demonstrations of principles now forgotten. Then there are the biblical references. The cherubim atop the Ark of the Covenant, often depicted with wings, are described as moving with the power of God. What if such descriptions were inspired not only by spiritual visions, but by devices that seemed alive? Skeptics remind us that myth exaggerates, that poets often dream up wonders never meant to be real. Yet what strikes us is the consistency. Across continents, across centuries, stories emerge of moving statues, self-propelled guardians, artificial servants, always mechanical, always lifelike, always tinged with mystery. What would it mean if even one of these was real? Imagine standing in a temple where a statue of a god suddenly lifts its hand, its eyes glowing with firelight, its mouth speaking in a booming voice. Would you not fall to your knees, convinced of divinity? Yet perhaps behind the curtains, clever engineers pulled levers, directed water through pipes, or released pressure from hidden chambers. To the uninitiated, technology and magic are indistinguishable. Arthur C. Clarke, millennia later, would state this as a law. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. But perhaps the ancients lived this law. Perhaps they encountered machines whose workings were lost, misunderstood, and so absorbed into myth. Another question lingers. Why do so many myths describe lifelike creations built from metal or clay? Is this simply human imagination, or did ancient people actually experiment with the boundary between life and machine? Consider golems in Jewish mysticism, beings formed from clay, animated to serve their masters, or the terracotta army in China, thousands of soldiers, frozen in March, perhaps inspired by a vision of mechanical guardians. And in Mesoamerica, tales describe statues that could walk and speak, creations of the gods before humanity was perfected. Again and again, across the world, we see echoes of artificial life. Could this be coincidence? Perhaps, but another possibility lurks, one that chills with its implications, that at some point, long ago, humans glimpsed machines beyond their understanding, perhaps relics of an earlier, forgotten civilization, perhaps artifacts left by visitors not of this earth. To preserve the memory, they wove these encounters into myth. If this sounds far-fetched, consider the Antikythera Mechanism once more. For centuries, Greek myths about miraculous devices were dismissed as fantasy. Then divers pulled from the sea a machine with 30 interlocking gears, capable of calculations thought impossible for its time. What we thought was myth became reality. What we dismissed as exaggeration became proof of sophistication. How many more myths wait to be vindicated? How many machines lie buried, corroded, mistaken for art or ritual? And so, as we walk through the ruins of temples, as we read epics and hymns, we must ask, are we reading poetry or instruction manuals disguised as legend? Did the ancients dream of robots or remember them? Perhaps the greatest irony is that we are repeating them. Today we build machines to mimic life, robots that walk, drones that fly, AI that speaks in human voices. Thousands of years ago, our ancestors told of the same things. We believe we are the pioneers, but perhaps we are the inheritors. The machines of myth may not have survived in metal and wood, but they endure in story. And stories are blueprints too. Blueprints of a forgotten age, waiting for us to notice, waiting for us to remember. So as we close this long night together, carry this thought with you, that history is not a straight line, but a circle, that civilizations rise, fall, and rise again, that knowledge is found, lost, and found again, that every myth may be the echo of another age, and if that is true, then we are not the first. We may not even be the greatest, but we have one advantage, the ability to listen to the echoes, to hear the warnings, to learn from what was forgotten. Listen closely, and you may hear them still. The hum of the earth beneath your feet, the whisper of fire in the sky, the rhythm of stories that refuse to die, echoes of forgotten worlds. This is not the end. It is only the beginning.